Fuck. This is harder than it looks. Hey, you dumb bitch. The astute among you may have noticed that I am holding a heatsink, a central processing unit, and a tube of thermal compound. And the rest of you don't fucking care, so you should probably just leave this fucking video right now, because it's gonna get a whole lot more fucking nerdy than what I'm holding in my hand right now. CPUs, heatsinks, the shit that goes between them, and why you should give a fucking think about it. So, there have been a few market force. I don't really understand big words like market forces. So instead of saying things like that, I'm just gonna talk to you like I normally do about what the hell is going on and my thoughts. So, central processor. If you're not familiar, every computer has one. It makes the windows go. And it produces a lot of heat making the windows go. So in order for this thing not to kill itself by the heat it produces, because it produces too much heat for it to run without something taking away the heat it makes, is that you put something on it that takes away the heat it makes. Wow, that's a fucking ingenious solution. How'd anybody think of that, right? What you do is you put that on top, but unfortunately that's not enough. You see these two surfaces here? They look flat, but like scientifically, I guess they're not. So anyway, what this means is that there's a bunch of empty space, but there's like microscopic dips, whatever. The point is that you gotta put something in between them so that they can make a better thermal bond. Wish I had a thermal bond. Anyway, getting back on topic, this top part is, I guess, what we got to talk about next. This is called an integrated heat spreader. There is an example of an open die CPU. So under this little piece of metal here on top of this CPU is essentially the same thing you see on this CPU, a die. And what that die does is that it makes the windows go. But the problem with this one is that this little piece here that makes the windows go, that gets really hot, it's made out of silica. It's glass, essentially, to the layman. And basically it can chip. So in order to get around that, some smart cookie put a piece of metal on top. Wowie. And they soldered it. So basically, if you don't know what solder is, then what the fuck are you doing watching this? They've permanently affixed it with solder. On the good ones anyway, but Intel has not been making the good ones lately. Intel has been making the good ones, but we're gonna just put peanut butter in between to save some money, so why not? So you see that little skid mark? Here, I'm gonna even put this in focus. You see the skid mark on the CPU? That's basically how it comes from Intel's factory, to transfer heat between the die and the integrated heat spreader. So in order to get around that, there sort of was this stuff, which I'm sure you've seen every YouTuber in the world cover, and this is Conductonaut liquid metal. This is gallium.
Open the door or I'm gonna throw rocks through your windows, you dumb whore. I want the money.
It's liquid metal. It's fucking gallium. So it goes in between the integrated heat spreader and the CPU. But unlike thermal compound, which is very easy to you just basically put a little glob of it in the center and the pressure takes care of it, liquid metal is not that easy. Unfortunately, with liquid metal, you get a whole bunch of little crackhead, little fucking heroin addict to it. It's a whole little kit. Got all these little pieces that come out, and like, you got the heroin needle, and you got the tube. So the point is that you have to spread it. You want a thin layer on both the cooling solution itself, in this case, a giant, humongous heat sink, and the top of this integrated heat spreader. Really, the important part to worry about is that center rectangle. And then, yeah, so with that, you see about anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees Celsius decreases in temperature, especially if you're replacing the shitty peanut butter underneath this stuff. Otherwise, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 degrees over a high-end thermal compound. But there is one other big advantage over this stuff that I forgot to mention with Conductonaut, which, although it is a pain to first install, after that, as long as it's not exposed directly to air, it seems to last a really long time. I have it installed on the ThinkPad. Don't think different, ThinkPad. I have it installed in the stock cooler of my server, and I have it installed on my desktop. Anyway, and then there's one other option which I don't actually own, but here's a JPEG of it, and it's this IC graphene pad, carbon nanotube technology. High five. And what this stuff does is it's not actually a goop, unlike the other two. It's just like, basically, it's like a little microfiber cloth, and you put it in where the goop would go, and then it just does the job the goop does, but it's not necessarily quite as well. Sometimes a little better than cheap stuff, sometimes a little worse than the really expensive stuff. But if you own like just like a consumer level CPU, or like a laptop that doesn't overheat already, because even though it's kind of ideal for a machine that moves around a lot, because if you do have to open it for some reason, you can reuse it. Unfortunately, it does not perform well enough, and the computer on thermal paste already thermal throttles. So with the liquid metal, it doesn't thermal throttle, because that extra performance you get from applying it to an open die CPU and allowing it to sink heat much more efficiently into the copper of the heatsink, now it doesn't thermal throttle because it can get that heat out quicker, whereas with a traditional compound it can't, and then certainly with a gimped graphene pad it won't be able to. But if you have, for example, like a Core i5 desktop processor and you don't overclock, and you're just hearing from your IT guy that you got to keep up with your thermal paste. They probably talk about, oh, your thermal paste was dried out. Oh, your fucking thermal paste was dried out, because I know I say it a lot. Oh, your thermal paste was dried out. Your cooler wasn't working right, because your thermal paste was dried out. Your cooler can't work, because your fucking thermal paste was dried out. Change the fucking thermal paste. But people don't. So, if you want an alternative, you could be a big baller like me and buy the Black Rock heroin pack, or you could be just like a regular Joe and buy that little microfiber little Dewey Dad, and you just slip it in there and you learn something. It's arts and crafts. Anyway, so hopefully this has given you an idea of sort of what scenario you should consider using what paste. For just sort of like a first-time builder, the industry standard is always there, and it's easy and you don't really gotta think about it, it'll just work. And then if you want something for like a lower powered, like just like a desktop thin client, and you don't want to have to hear from your client again, buy a thermal pad. And then if you, if you want to go balls to the wall and ruin your life, buy a $40 pack of Conductonaut like a fucking animal. And I guess that concludes this. Oh yeah, I should mention, liquid metal. Just one last little thing, don't put it on aluminum. It turns it into tinfoil, and then it chips away. I'm fucking serious. It's gallium. Look it up. Anyway, so with that, all the warnings, yeah, it's like delidding, and I know I didn't really show... Anyway, I didn't show any of that. But anyway, now you... Yeah. Anyway, you have... Yeah.